Police have arrested the alleged leader of a so-called transgender vegan cult. Say those words again, a transgender vegan cult. Now, they're allegedly linked to 6 deaths across the U.S.
The alleged leader's name is Jack Zizians. Police say that Lesotho founded an anarchist group called the Zizians. The members are apparently smart and well-educated. Some are computer scientists who have worked for Google and NASA.
Law enforcement say that they hold radical views on issues like AI, veganism, and gender ideology. In one instance, 2 people allegedly killed a Border Patrol agent after he stopped their car in Vermont on Inauguration Day. The guns the suspects allegedly used were connected to this cult. In a piece for the New York Post in late January, reporter Andy Ngo said that before all of that, federal law enforcement were surveilling 2 suspects before the alleged shooting.
Staff from a motel in Vermont called police after allegedly seeing these people with a gun, a black tactical clothing, no rights. Cops showed up, the pair told them they were looking at property, and nothing really happened. The Border Patrol incident allegedly happened some days later. No also writes that one of the suspects' parents had reported her missing in 2024.
No dives a little deeper, writing their leader, Jack Ziz Lesotho, is a biological male who identifies as a woman, also uses the name Andrea Phelps, and is accused of influencing followers to kill. Lesotho's archived prolific blog writings ramble about the use of violence and radical anarchist tactics to achieve various ends. His supporters say he died in 2022, but that appeared to be based on a fake online obituary to try to escape the law. Here to make sense of this story is Andy Ngo himself. Andy, thank you for joining Rising.
My pleasure.
Nice to see you. Tell us more about this cult leader and the ideology. How are they recruiting people, and it seems to be resulting in actual violent assaults?
Well, on the surface, the story does sound sort of like, I believe the Boston Globe said, made up from far-right memes. But as you outlined, there's a whole trail of bodies from across the United States, killings that go back to 2022. Now, the shooting death of the Border Patrol agent in Vermont, that was sort of the catalyst that linked all these other homicides that have happened together to this group or cult, you could call it. The ideology that they espouse is esoteric and difficult to comprehend, but it includes aspects of leftist anarchism, veganism, and also transhumanism. And its leader is Jack Ziz Lesotho. He had faked his death in 2022. His counsel told the court in Solana County, California, in the Bay Area, that his client had died, apparently, in a boating accident. But he was arrested in 2023 in Delaware County in the course of an investigation in Pennsylvania of a double homicide. And then his bail of $500,000 was reduced to $10,000, and he bailed out and disappeared until his arrest last weekend in western rural Maryland. And he wasn't alone. He was with another person of interest in several other homicide investigations, Michelle Zeo, as well as another member named Daniel Blank.
Andy, one of the things we try to do all the time on Rising is make it clear that people are entitled, of course, to their day in court if they are facing criminal charges. Now, Lesotho's lawyer has said that he will plead not guilty, I think, to any charges, right? He says that Lesotho is innocent of the things he's been accused of, and I think that goes for several of the other people involved in this story. Is that correct?
So Lesotho, what's interesting about the prior criminal cases against him in California and Pennsylvania, he's actually never been formally charged with homicide or being accessory to murder. In California, there's a 2019 criminal case related to essentially a protest riot that he and his comrades were allegedly involved in the Bay Area. And in Delaware County, in the double homicide investigation, he was charged with obstruction. So the accusations against the group is that he influences and or radicalizes his followers into committing acts of violence. And there are 2 people who have a trial upcoming in Solana County, California in April. a witness to that case who survived a prior attempted assassination on his life, was killed in January by another alleged member of the group. That person is in custody. He's a man named Maximilian Snyder, who's originally from Seattle. He is the fiance of, or husband, I should say, of the female suspect who was apprehended after the deadly shootout in Vermont. So Jack Lesotho over and over has never formally been accused of one who slits someone's throat or pulls the trigger. And actually at his first court hearing in Allegheny County, Maryland, earlier this week, he said, this is almost verbatim, "I don't know why I'm here. I didn't do anything wrong." He was very dismissive of the misdemeanor charges against him, and his big concern was that he would be given a vegan diet.
And the person arrested alongside Jack Lesotho, this Michelle Zeo, this is the individual you're referring to, according to news reports, her parents were shot in the head and killed 2 years ago, and she was a person of interest in that case, but then was not charged in connection with that. Is that correct?
That's right. So nobody's been charged with the double homicide investigation in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And that happened on New Year's Eve in late 2022. The two who were shot execution style in their home are the Rita and Richard Zeo, and they're the elderly parents of Michelle. She is their only child. She, after her grandmother died shortly after her parents died, she was the sole benefactor of all the properties and assets that her parents had. She has not been charged with their killing. She was federally charged this week with over allegedly making a false statement in the purchase of a firearm. And that's the only federal charge against her. And the charges in Maryland have to do with obstruction, resisting arrest, illegal firearm possession offenses. So, however, because federal authorities are involved and they're cooperating with the local authorities, the judge did deny all three of them bail. I was holding my breath a bit. I was concerned that Jack Lesotho and the other two were going to be let out because the accusations, at least in Maryland, are essentially nonviolent misdemeanors. However, the judge did deny bail, so they're currently still in custody.
What do we know, Andy, about this group in terms of, beyond the allegations of criminality, what do we know about its size? Are we talking about a very small group of people? Or are we talking about a more significant membership? And also, what about its origins? I mean, I noticed that Lesotho does go by the name Ziz, and the group is the Zizians. So was it Lesotho who essentially set it up?
The group has its origins around 2016, which is when the blogging of Mr. Lesotho began, and he used the alias online as Ziz. The writings cover a number of issues. A lot of it is standard leftist anarchist views about punching Nazis and whatnot. And then some of it goes into more esoteric things, quite cult-like things about different hemispheres of the brain and the use of sleep denial to control different personalities that are in the mind. Lesotho's writings and its members the group's members are all highly educated, intelligent. They've worked, Lesotho himself had worked for NASA several summers in a row. Michelle Zeo did as well. One of the deceased members who died in the course of a attempted assassination in 2022 worked at Google. So it attracts people who are transgender and very high IQ and highly educated, particularly in the sciences. And veganism is very central to the ideology. Jack Lesotho also made that quite clear at his first court hearing. And what seems like a paradox, though, is that even though the group believes that it is immoral for humans to eat animals, it is permittable for them to kill people who somehow get in their way. And their ideology has a whole way of their beliefs are sort of an offshoot of rationalism, and they believe that their attacks on others are preemptive self-defense. So every violent action that they do is actually just an act of retribution, or it's self-defense, and it's justified in some way.
Yeah, the IQ, the level of intelligence of these people, the fact that many of them held, important positions that jobs you can only have if you are very smart, is I think what makes this a little unusual. It sounds to me like what you're describing is a kind of Charles Manson cult type thing, but of course in that case the members, the people who fell under Manson's influence, were kind of vagrant, hippie people. Manson himself had been in and out of prison his whole life, whereas these are people who had excelled in highly competitive workplace environments to some degree.
That's right. Jack Lasota went to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and he studied computer engineering. When he was undergrad, he interned multiple years in a row at NASA, and then he at some point relocated to the Bay Area. I believe it was around 2016, and around 2017 is when sort of the beginning of this group started. First, they were living small commune, you could argue, on a tugboat in the Bay Area, and then eventually they relocated to a plot of land. They befriended a man and he lent them property on his lot in Vallejo in 2020, and this was the man that they allegedly conspired to kill in 2022. He had a firearm for self-defense. He shot one of them dead, shot one of the other attackers. A third attacker was uninjured. And so he's 82 years old, and he was killed earlier this month in really shocking circumstances, brutal circumstances. And that trial may be in jeopardy, since he was the only person who had witnessed the 22 attack, and he can no longer testify because he was murdered.
Andy Ngo, thank you so much for joining Rising to fill us in on these details. They are fascinating and horrifying. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Next up, George Clooney was on with Stephen Colbert. We'll discuss. Stay tuned.